All right, the culmination of the geometry chapter or the geometry section module comes with finding the perimeter, the circumference, the area, and the volume of composite shapes. Now, composite shapes really just mean they're either shapes put together in some way. So I can either add them together or I can subtract one from the other. So we're really just talking about a mixture of shapes. So let's look at some of these. All right, so we have to find the perimeter of the following, which means that we are finding all around the outside edges. So if I highlight what I'm looking for, okay, I want this, 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 and this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. So this is important because I want to set myself up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now I have this one, I have this one, I have this one, and I have this one. So I have 4 out of the 6. The 2 that I do not have are this one here and this one here. Now, you have to be able to isolate for a minute, and I'm going to try something. Hopefully it works. You have to be able to isolate here because if I look at this, I didn't want to get rid of that. Hang on. Okay. Basically, we wanted to focus on tops and bottoms. So if I look at the bottom, I know it's 10. Whoops. I know it's 10. Okay. Now, if I look at this one and this one, if you slid this one down here, it would basically make this end and this end equal, right? If I slid that down. So in doing so, that allows me to say, well, if I have this as 4, what's this piece going to be over here? So that total, I have 10. So one of my kids has 4. What do I have to give my other kid if I have a total of 10 M&Ms to hand out? Well, this is going to be 6, which means up here is going to be 6. Okay. Now, similarly, if I have this as 10, the left, I want to now look at the right pieces, excuse me, here and here, and I want to say, okay, I'm adding up to 10 again, but I have 2 over here. 2 plus what gives me 10? And the answer is 8. So this is 8 right there. So now I have all the sides that I need. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go clockwise. So I have P equals 10 plus 6 plus 8, the 2 that I found, plus 4 plus 2 plus 10. And I'm all the way back at the beginning. So 10 plus 10 is 20, 8 and 2 is another 20, 6 and 4 is another 10, 6 and 4 is another 10. So I have 20 plus 10 plus 10, which gives me a total of 40 yards squared. Oh, sorry, just yards. I'm in perimeter. Now, similarly, with this one, we're doing something similar, but see those 4s on the inside? They don't really help because remember, perimeter is talking about the outside edge only. So I have to find this and this and this and this. Okay. What I know is that if I if I ignore all of this, I have half a circle, right? I have half a circle with a diameter of 4. If my diameter is 4, whoops, definitely don't want it that big. Okay, if my diameter is 4, my radius is 2, because my radius is half of my diameter. Now, if we go ahead and look, at the rest of this, okay, I know that this one is the same, as is this one, as is this one, because they all have this 4. The 4 from the top hops down, the 4 from the right hops to the left. So all 4 of these half circles are the same. Well, if I have 4 half circles, I have 4 halves of my circle, which is going to be the circumference equals 2 pi r, or pi d, but I'm going to use 2 pi r. I like to keep everything consistent across the board. So now I have 2 times pi times 2, not r, 2, because my radius is 2. So I get that the circumference of just a plain old circle with a radius of 2 is 4 pi. I'm going to plug that in here because now I'm saying to myself, well, I don't have a whole circle. I actually have 4 halves of that circle. So 4 times 1/2 times 4 pi. Half of 4 is 2 times 4 pi, and that's going to be 8 pi. 8 pi sorry, don't want to use P, I want to use C here. 8 times 3.14 is going to be 25.1, and that is rounded. Make sure you round. And we are in inches. All right, find the shaded area of each of the following, round to the nearest tenth. Now, with this, or with these, we do not have that shape to find the formula. So we have to figure out what shapes these shapes have been made up and whether we're adding or subtracting. If it's all shaded across the board, we're going to be adding. If there's a hollow section that's not shaded, we're going to be subtracting. But for this one, we have a rectangle and then we have a triangle. So I'm going to come down here and write rectangle plus triangle. Okay, my area is going to equal my rectangle's area and my triangle's area. Now, I'm going to kind of keep these separate for a minute because now I come over here and I say, well, the area of a rectangle is length times width. If I look at this rectangle only, I have 10 times 4, which is 40. I'm going to leave my units out of it for a minute. Now, if I come over here and say, okay, what's the area of a triangle? That's 1/2 times the base times the height. Well, do I have all that? I know that the 1/2 stays 1/2. I know that the base is 3 because it's right here. This 4 from over on the left, we can also use on the right, and that 4 becomes the height of my triangle. Again, looking at the multiplication as something you can do in any order, we say half of 4 is 2, and 2 times 3 is 6. So at the end of this, when I want to figure out the area, I'm looking at 40 and 6, and I want to add them. So 40 plus 6 is 46, and I am working in yards squared. All right, so for this one, this is different than number 2 because now we're looking for all of this. We want the inside. So basically what I have, my area is going to equal a square in the middle, because if you remember this, if this is 5, they're all 5, plus 4 halves of a circle. Okay, and really you could even 4 halves of a circle, and there you go. 4 halves of a circle. 4 times 1/2 times the circle. Again, keeping things kind of separate here. My square is going to be 5 times 5, or 5 squared, which is 25. My circular piece, well, 5 is not a diameter, or 5 is a diameter, sorry. Diameter equals 5, which means my radius is 2.5 because my radius is half of it. So I'm going to say that this is 4 times 1/2 times pi r squared, because that's my formula. Really over here I should have written s times s. And when I do this, or when I plug in, I get 4 times 1/2 times pi times 2.5 squared. That's a long one. So first I'm going to do my exponent, and 2.5 squared is going to give me 6.25. So I get 6.25. Now I can kind of figure out what I'm doing here. Half of 4 is 2 times 6.25, and then times the pi. I'm going to throw the pi to the end. So I do 2 times 6.25, and I get 12.5. I don't want to round at the end. Notice I left the 6.25 alone. I did not round it. You do not round until the end. And I get 12.5 pi. Now, I'm adding these, right? Because it told me up there I was adding. So I have 2 ways I can express this answer. I can say 25 plus 12.5 pi. That is actually an answer, and it's correct. The other way you can do it is you can multiply the 12.5 by the 3.14, and you can get 25 plus 39.25, which is equal to 64.25, which rounds to 64.3. And in both of these, I have feet, so I am working with feet squared at the end. All right, so now let's look at 2 where you would subtract. Now, why would you subtract? Because basically you have this hollow piece right here in the middle, or right here in the middle here, and you need to get rid of that piece in order to find this shaded piece, or this shaded piece. So what you do is you find the whole and you subtract the part. Okay? Now, let me get rid of my shading here, my fancy shading. I'm going to do this the same exact way. I'm going to say, okay, the area will equal the big rectangle minus the square. Now, how do I know it's a square? Well, it has 1.5 and 1.5 on both sides, which would then flip to the bottom and to the left. So again, I'm going to cut this in the middle, and I'm going to work either on the big rectangle or the square, the little square. I'm going to do them separately. So my big rectangle, my area of it is going to be length times width, which is going to be 9 times 6, which is going to be 54 in this case. My square, area of a square, is going to be s squared, or s times s. That's going to be 1.5 times 1.5. And 1.5 times 1.5 is going to give me 2.25. I'm not going to round here. I'm going to subtract here, because that's what it told me to do. And I get 54 minus 2.25, which is the area will equal 51.75. Now, this, if you think about this, like this, it's a totally unrealistic idea, but like if this is your pool, okay, where your water is, and this is your sidewalk, this would be, you know, me figuring out how much concrete I need for the sidewalk around my pool. I can calculate the rectangle, but ultimately I have to take out the area where my pool sits for it to make sense. All right, the next one, I'm going to have the area equal to the big circle. You always start with the whole, and I'm just looking for basically what shape it is, and with these, how big it is. So big circle minus small circle. For both of these, I have the areas equal to pi r squared. And for the large circle, I have that my radius is 4.25. So I have pi times 4.25 squared. And for the other one, I have pi times 2.5 squared. And I'm going to get a lot of decimals for this, but that's okay. I'm going to end up rounding at the end. So for the big circle, I get 18.0625 pi minus 6.25 pi. Now, because they both have pi at the end, I can subtract them. And I can get 11.81 pi, which really rounds just to 11.8 pi. I can also get values for them. So if I do 18.0625 times 3.14, I get 56.71625, and I subtract 6.25 times 3.14, and I get 19.625, and 56.71625 minus the 19 is 37.09, which rounds to 37.1. Both of those are in inches squared. All right, let's look at how we would do volume. We would do volume the same way. For this, I'm going to add, because it's two shaded figures put together. For this, I would subtract, because it's one shaded figure taken away, or one figure taken away from the other. So for this one, I'm going to have the volume. I have to be able to pull apart these two shapes. I have a cylinder plus half of a sphere. Notice it's not a whole sphere, it's a half of a sphere. So the volume of my cylinder is pi r squared times h. And the volume of half a sphere will be 1/2 times 4/3 times pi r cubed. Now here, my 6 is my height and my 2 is my radius. And I always want to label that or mark that in some way. So here I have pi times 2 squared times 6, which gives me pi times 4 times 6, which gets me 24 pi. And then over here, if I do these fractions, I get 4/6 times pi times 2 to the third, which gets me, this can simplify to 2/3 times 8 times pi. So here I have 16/3 because I can put that over 1 and then multiply these again. 16/3 pi. So my answer for this one, I'm subtracting. I can write it. It would be completely acceptable. 24 pi minus 16/3 pi. If I want to, I can come up with nice, neat numbers by multiplying by 3.14. So this one is 75.36. This one is 16.74 if you want to, or 75 if you want to go 2 decimal places out. And 75.36 minus 16.75 is going to be 58.61, which rounds to 58.6. And I am in feet cubed. All right, my final one. Oop, I messed up. I was supposed to add those. So from here out, this is addition. This is addition, which changes that. And I get 75.36 plus 16.75. Were any of you cringing as I was doing it? I hope so. Yelling at me through the screen. When I add those together, I get 92.11, which rounds to 92.1 feet to the third. All right, so coming over here, I know my volume for this one is going to be a rectangular prism, because that's my big, minus a cylinder. I'm going to rewrite this for a minute because I'm not going to have room to do this. If I can't fit the word, I'm not going to be able to fit anything else. So volume equals rectangular prism minus the cylinder. Okay, put my line down the middle, write my formulas. Rectangular prism is length times width times height. Cylinder is pi r squared times height. So, in order to do the length, width, and height, we have 8, 8, and 8. So this is actually a cube, even though it doesn't really look like it from the picture. So I have 8 times 8 times 8. You can calculate cube as you would a rectangular prism. That's not going to mess you up, because 8 times 8 times 8 is the same as 8 to the third. So you get 512 for that one. Now my cylinder in the middle here, I have a radius of 1, I square that, and then a height of 8. Because if my height here is 8, my height here is 8, my height here is also 8. 1 is the radius because I see that right in the middle and it's only half. So I have pi times 1, because 1 squared is 1, times 8, which really gives me 8 pi. So again, my answer could be 512 minus 8 pi, and I'm good with that, millimeters cubed. Or I could come up with what this equals, and it would be 512 minus 25.12, and I would get 486.88, which rounds to 486.9 millimeters to the third. And there you have it. You may need to or want to watch this video a few times. I know it gets in depth. This will be where we spend most of our time at our live, but I wanted you to have a heads up on where we are going. All right, I hope everyone has a nice week, and I will see you at our live.